Welcome back. This time we're talking about Cars 3, the latest film from Pixar. I went into this one with some interesting expectations based both on the marketing as well as my opinions of the previous Cars films. And honestly, it turned out to be a pretty decent Pixar film, which for Pixar means it's pretty low on my list of favorite movies from the studio, but it also means it's not half bad either. It's pretty generic, just like the first film, but it's a definite improvement over Cars 2, which is to date still my least favorite Pixar film of all time. So if you're a fan of the series, or your children are fans of the series, it's definitely worth checking out. I don't think parents are going to be entirely bored with it, and I think children are going to find all of the Lightning McQueen action and that they've come to expect from the series and should have a good time with it. Now let me say, Cars is pretty much the most generic Pixar film they've ever made. It's got a very simple storyline that is essentially a remake of Doc Hollywood, the sort of comedic romance film with Michael J. Fox from, I think, back in the 90s. At the time, it felt like a very generic Pixar film because, this came out around when they were reaching their peak of creativity, and then just never felt like it was a film that reached those same heights. But then we got Cars 2, which decided to, for some reason, focus on Mater, voiced by Larry the Cable Guy, and turn him into an accidental spy in some kind of weird Bond spoof, instead of leaving us mostly in the racing realm like the first film. That film was horrible. I hate that movie. I've never watched it a second time after watching it in theaters. So I really felt that Cars 3 had the opportunity of being sort of a redemption film in the vein of, say, like the Ocean's 11 franchise. Ocean's 11, one of my favorite movies. Ocean's 12, total crap. Ocean's 13, not great, but it does redeem the franchise. So it at least goes out on a relatively high note, or at least above average note. And that's essentially what Cars 3 gives us here. The story finds Lightning McQueen much later in his career than we saw him in the first film. In that film, he was, the cocky rookie, and now he's sort of the grizzled veteran, sort of like his hero. And like his hero, he is finding that there are newer racers that are overtaking him, both through technology and better training. And this culminates in a crash that, obviously, if you've seen the first teaser trailer, they made a big deal about. Much more in that trailer than in the actual movie. And I'll get to a little bit of that in a bit. But basically, it's sort of him trying to regain his former glory, and if nothing else, have the ability to end his career on his own terms and not just be shoved out the door like his mentor was. And this is how he meets a new trainer named Cruz Ramirez, voiced by Cristela Alonzo. And honestly, the story is pretty predictable. There's a moment about midway through the movie where certain things happen, and I essentially knew how the movie was going to end, more or less. I was actually kind of hoping it didn't, because it was very cliched. The ending is very cliched and, again, predictable, and that's the route they went with it. It just felt very safe. I can't entirely blame them because of how bad Cars 2 was, and them hoping that, I'm assuming them hoping that this could be their redemption film. Now, as far as the marketing goes, again, there was so much emphasis on the crash. That initial teaser trailer that shows a slow motion wreck involving Lightning McQueen, and then the words popping up, "After this moment, nothing will be the same." And I guess that's kind of accurate, but the crash, and this isn't really a spoiler because it happens really early, and again, it's in every single trailer. It happens very early in the movie, and there's like not really a rehab or repair sequence. It just suddenly jumps in time, and he's completely fixed. Just dealing with the fact that whether he'd been in that crash or not, he's having a hard time keeping up with these new high-tech rookies. And that is where I will say there is some interesting elements to this film, if nothing else, for the fact that it's a children's film with a lead character dealing with the end of his career and how these younger people are overtaking him. We've seen Pixar do this before with storylines targeting older audience members, even though the films themselves are made more or less for children. Toy Story 3, and of course Up. And they've made this work, and they make it work again here. I mean, there's enough fun action to keep the kids entertained. The other storylines, I think, will keep the parents and older audience members engaged as well. I'm just not a fan of how they resolved everything. I don't think everything was earned in the end and didn't have the emotional weight or satisfaction that it could have had if they had better paced the movie. So overall, Cars 3 is a vast improvement over Cars 2. It is still a very generic Pixar film and would fall in a similar tier if I were to rank the films as the original film in sort of the generic category. They're not films that I dislike, but they're not ones that I would seek out to watch again. So if you've seen Cars 3, what did you think about it? As always, you can subscribe to my channel, check out some other reviews, and until next time, I'll see you at the movies.